There is always get appearance and reality. I think there looks here one monk, here one monk, here one monk with hair.
The Tibetan Photo Project got its start in Northern California when monks on a cultural tour made a stop in Mendocino. And it was there that I was introduced to a program for sponsoring monks living in exile in India. When I sent my first letter, I also sent along a disposable camera. And I had no idea what I was going to get back. I had no idea what this was going to take. After about 6 weeks, the first correspondence returned, and this was when I was going to learn that it was going to take a long time for most correspondents to make the full cycle in India. Taking his first photos with a recyclable camera, Jamyang Norbu gave the Tibetan Photo Project its start. Jamyang's personal story is representative of the plight of thousands of Tibetan monks living in exile. Under the watchful eye and heavy-handed influence of the Chinese government and military, he was unable to get either a traditional secular or monastic education inside Tibet. The Chinese had also destroyed all but 13 of 6,000 monasteries that made up much of Tibet's education system. Joining a few young countrymen, he took the treacherous walk over the Himalayas into Nepal and moved onward to the Tibetan colonies in southern India. Now in his 30s, Jamyang is 2/3 of the way through a 20-year program at the Drepung Monastery that will give him the equivalent of a PhD in Tibetan Buddhist philosophy. When he was introduced to his first camera, Jamyang sent us a letter saying he had no experience and the Tibetans had no culture based in photography, leaving him at a loss at what to photograph. There have been thousands of beautiful portfolios, books, exhibits, and films on the Tibetans, but all from the preconceptions of the Western eye. Jamyang's question gave us a clear picture of the mission of the Tibetan Photo Project, and when we wrote back, we provided a few elementary tips about lighting. But regarding the content of his photographs, we asked Jamyang and the monks at Drepung to take pictures of what they felt the West should know about their lives. Not long afterwards, Parade magazine reported to 16 million readers on the Tibetan Photo Project, and they called the works by the monks in exile rewarding.
So the initial reason we brought the Tibetan Photo Project to Duke was to help us formulate the work we were going to do in the Himalayan region over the summer, and also just because of the general appeal of the project, putting the actual recording of Tibetan culture into the hands of the Tibetans in exile is just something that seemed not necessarily novel, but at least unique to the Tibetan situation, and something that this school has an interest in. I mean, we're having a small gathering now. Hopefully this will grow into something bigger in the future, but there's so many different ways that this can help us not only shape our work, but also just teach us about a part of the world that we don't necessarily have access to here in this way.
Well, I think the thing that interests me about the Tibetan Photo Project is, as someone who's interested in both human rights and a creative side, I like to see kind of the fusion of those two things. I'm kind of sick and tired of seeing only the human rights side, and I'm really interested in kind of in taking a creative look, whether it's through fiction, whether it's through photography, whether it's through film, and taking a creative look at these human rights issues, because I think that's really the only way that you're going to reach enough people to actually make a difference. There aren't enough people that are interested in just the pure human rights issues, I think, to really make a change. But if you turn it into turn that that human rights issue through a creative outlet, you can get a lot more done, I feel like, and that's interesting to me.
Well, yeah, and coming from an academic setting here at Duke, it's a very high-powered university, and we constantly have journalism thrown at us, different political literature thrown at us, to just get the creative side of it, the more documentary work at just more of a personal level, especially with the format that you guys have been working in, putting the tools in the hands of the people that you're trying to learn about. It's a particularly special idea to us, so that's why it was so appealing from the beginning, because as Brian said, the human rights work sometimes just gets a little too monotonous to swallow all the time, over and over again. This is much more connecting on a personal level. It's going to affect people like college students who are overwhelmed with information, bombarded with different causes, and we're kind of formulating our worldview here. We're in our 20s. In a place that's full of information and resources, and this is just a really poignant way to look at something. And the appeal of it is that it's completely accurate. It's photography, it's visual, and it's in the hands of the people that we're trying to learn about, not necessarily this anthropologist or journalist going over to look at people and tell us what we should think about them, but having them tell us their own story.
And it allows you to see that when it really comes down to it, we're not that different from the Tibetans, from anyone who's suffering in a human rights problem worldwide. We're just the same. We've just been put in a different situation, and art allows us to do that.
Yeah.
Lobsang Topgal is a former monk living with his family in the Tibetan colony of Mungad in southern India. His father came out of Tibet with the Dalai Lama in 1959. It was here that Lobsang's family rebuilt their lives and their home with their own hands, often battling the extreme heat and monsoons that claimed thousands of Tibetan lives. At the Janchup Choling Nunnery, we were introduced to Sering Doma. She was the first student at the nunnery 19 years ago. Today, she is its director. The nunnery houses 160 women. They are educated in language, science, and the subjects of basic education, along with studies in Buddhist philosophy. Sering explained that many of the nuns who came into exile sought the solitude and safety of the nunnery after being tortured by the Chinese government, simply because of their desire to be Tibetan. Like all Tibetan organizations, they cope well on their own, and through the structure of the Tibetan community, along with the help from around the world, they manage to have the basics, but there is always a need for more help. A visit by outsiders to the southern Tibetan colonies is highly restricted, but with the help of Lobsang and his friend Adu, we gained access to places rarely seen by Westerners.
This is the Gandhan monastery. There are two parts, one Changzi, we see outside the Sazzy monastery. Now this is the Sazzy monastery for the Tibetan. This is Tibet for the morning and evening. Yes, so all the monks go to Tibet. Yeah, this is all the Gandhin monastery, but they are the two-part monastery. One is Gandhin Changzi monastery, one is Gandhin Sharzi monastery. No, now this is the Changzi monastery. This is a new temple. Yeah, the Sharzi monastery is outside.
It is the tradition of Tibetans to live in extended families, and the elders share homes with their children. But some Tibetans have no families. Lobsang took us to a senior care center that is at least able to provide the basics, something not often found in the overwhelming poverty of India. Over our 3 extraordinary days, Lobsang and Adu tried to give us a complete view of life in the colonies, and it was not without surprises.
One team is monk, one team is lay people. Lay and monk. Yeah, red one is monk, another one is lay people.
Lobsang first contacted the Tibetan Photo Project by email. He included a few simple photos and demonstrated a passion for helping the world understand life in exile. Lobsang is neither technically trained or skilled in photography, and yet he has recorded the heart of the Tibetan people on film. Lobsang works with a donated Nikon camera. He is constantly after us to send him enlargements, and working with clothesline and clips, he hangs exhibits of his work, using photography as a voice that does not need translation.
This month, Centenary College in Shreveport opened its newest exhibit at the Meadows Museum of Art. It's an extraordinary showing where exiles introduce themselves to the world.
Using disposable and digital cameras, photographers bring to the West insight into a 2,500-year-old culture from the land that's called the roof of the world.
They're black and white photographs of 4 travelers who are climbers really, going across China and traveling what's called Minyakonka, what was one of the highest mountains in the range in western China. So this is a photographic exhibition in black and white prior to the Tibetan community going into exile. And then we have down here photographs that are in color that are post-exile and that are from a monk in exile as well as a layperson in exile.
In 1949, the Chinese invaded. By 1959, the Dalai Lama went into exile. 1.2 million Tibetans were killed. There were about 6 million Tibetans, so 1/6 of the population was killed. They had 6,000 monasteries, which were the Tibetan educational system, and the Chinese left 13 monasteries standing.
My parents were the first Tibetan generation who came into exile. In fact, they were the first generation in India, but they were not born in India. They were escaped in 1959 into India. If you go back into our history, we have always had a very good and very sort of spiritual relation with India. In fact, the fact that Buddha, he was from India and Buddhism started from India, so it was the best thing and the best country that we could seek asylum in.
Our purpose is certainly to broaden our students' understanding of the world and to eliminate a lot of those geographic borders. Really, the world is a very, very small place. We have an opportunity to interact with places we may never have had that opportunity to interact with before.
Through this exhibition, with the kind help of Meadows, Diane, we were able to put up this exhibit so that we can have a lot of people coming in here, to see these photos and ask a lot of questions about Tibet.
Well, we started the project with monks at a monastery in southern India, and so the first group of photos come from the monks themselves, from their daily lives in the monastery. We don't ask them to shoot anything. We don't request any photograph from them. We simply tell them the instructions that I've given every Tibetan is photograph what you think we need to know. We have Wangden, who's been working on the project for probably about 3 years, and since most people know Tibetans as the Dalai Lama and maybe the monks, Wangden would be considered a civilian. He's got a family, he's got 2 kids, and he brought another perspective. Plus he's been a lifelong activist and he's been a teacher. So I thought the camera in his hands would be very well used.
Because Tibetan culture is so, in daily life, even daily life, is so connected with religious practice, we felt like what we would do would be to use the photographs along with objects from the culture that would help people understand what actually was going on in the photographs, where there are monks that are going to do ceremonial or ritual practices and they're holding musical instruments. It's great to see one of those musical instruments in a case, or in some areas of the gallery hanging from a wall where students or people coming through the museum can actually pick it up, turn the drum, make that sound that they would hear if they were actually in Dharamsala, India, going to a ceremony, to understand what it's like to live in exile, to understand what it is the Tibetan people have gone through, and to listen to those voices from across the planet, I think is a very, very important part of what we would like our visitors to carry away.
Tenzin Wangyal Andriksang is a second-generation Tibetan living in exile in northern India. He has worked as a teacher and also as a secretary in the office of the Dalai Lama. He has been a lifelong activist for Tibet. His family lives in Dharamsala, which is the political center for the working administration for Tibet's government in exile. Through email contact with the Office of His Holiness, we asked Wangyal if he would help us expand our view to Tibetan life in the north. From the very beginning, Wangyal produced amazing portraits while collecting moments that opened the Tibetan Photo Project to the variety of Tibetan life. When the opportunity arrived, and based on the strength of his photos and his own self-taught computer skills, we approached Wangyal about the possibility of helping us take the project to the next level and bring us sound and image in motion. We were as amazed with his original stock footage as we had been with the still images as he expanded our view of Tibetan life.
Why did you do this? First of all, again, there is like total lack of women's participation in artistic field. There's also lack of platform for Tibetan women to, even if they knew something, there's total lack of a platform for them.
Wangyal proposed a documentary film, and with a tiny budget we were able to provide a camera and an editing bay. As always, we did not want to ask for or direct the content of the film. We only asked Wangyal to make a film he envisioned completely from the Tibetan perspective, and then we stepped back and waited. His film, Voices in Exile, arrived about a year later.
Departure from a known environment often causes a population to lose its culture and transform its traditional lifestyle. But the unshakable determination of the Tibetan refugees has preserved their religion and culture in exile. Since coming into exile, thousands of Tibetans have been scattered throughout the world, but majority of them settled in India. In India again, the Tibetans were scattered in the country, with most of the community coming into existence in the south of India. It is as important now as it was in 1959 to maintain the Tibetan way of life in the refugee settlements and communities.
Wangyal's stock footage continues to come into the project and offers both touching and surprising views.
Tibet's spirit keep in sight. That's more important.
But you are not opposed to beauty contests as such.
If someone, you see, I don't know, interest such things, okay. Problem. I think beauty of face also important, but more important is the beauty of mind.
The assistant director of the Varga Gallery, and I think one of the most valuable things about the project was how it was made not from a Western perspective, how it was images of the monks by the monks themselves. And I think with any culture, at the beginning of this I wasn't especially knowledgeable about Tibetan culture, but I feel that more so than maybe reading about it in a textbook or from a Western perspective, that being able to see things through the monk's eyes has been especially valuable.
I'd never curated a show before, and I'd never been involved in anything like this before, but I knew that it was something that I felt very passionate about, just because of my closeness with this family and because of my personal history with my family and how close that has been, in my life. We've had, from the time that I was really little, we had Tibetan monk groups staying at our house and doing sand mandalas, and my parents were arranging different events. So it's something that's always kind of been around. And I knew that it was something really important that I needed to do and that I really wanted to do. And it was daunting just because it was so open. It was just anything you want to do, any way that you want to put it together, you can put it together and it's yours. And that is a pretty huge thing to be given, to really have the opportunity just to put things together the way that you want and to do things as perfectly as you possibly can, and to really feel the responsibility of wanting to do it so well because of the subject matter and because it's the first time that you've ever done anything like this before. And really wanting to prove it, I really wanted to prove it to myself that I could do this and that I could be involved and that I could honor my, I don't want to say obligation because obligation sounds negative. I really wanted to honor the fact that I'd made a commitment and that I really wanted to do the show and do it well. And I feel blessed for the opportunity. I feel blessed that I was able to do it in a way where there was no constraints, because you can just do anything.
For myself and a lot of Tibetan refugees in India, main I think is the sense of security, as I told you earlier. The sense of, security, and then sense of anchor in life, All this life you are in exile, you are a refugee, you have no anchor, and then in America, I think, unlike India, Tibetan refugees, they get this opportunity to settle down in life somewhere, to begin their life, so that they feel that, okay, living here, I feel secure. I feel like I have the freedom. My life is kind of, I don't have a country. My country is, occupied. I'm a refugee. But still living as a refugee, you have some sort of security in life, So Tibetans coming here, they seek that long-term security, like in not just in terms of like finances, that you can manage it in India too. Economy, India is growing. I mean, there are opportunities if you want, but politically, protection in the long run, that kind of security which Tibetans don't get, like Tibetans don't become citizen in India. They cannot go into mainstream like Indian thing, because you don't have papers, you never become citizen. So there are a lot of limitations for Tibetans in India that prevent them from, living their life, getting into the mainstream or India or living their life. So that in America I see a lot of these opportunities, freedom, and then eventually like you can become a citizen here, and then with that you can go to Tibet. This gives you that freedom, that like it's just a piece of paper, passport, but it's such a powerful thing. I have lived as a refugee with my yellow identity certificate. Such a problem. Like I have accepted that. It's of course I'm a refugee. Okay, this is my fate. I have accepted that. But then, practically, when you travel around, it makes you realize every day. When you go to the airport, you show your yellow passport, and then they have never seen this. We say we are from India. But they have seen Indian passport, it's a different color, and then you say you still have Indian sort of a passport, but it's not Indian. What is this? So a lot of these practical things, I think Tibetans, once you have your citizenship, that's solved. And then with that, I can travel, not only around the world, I can travel to Tibet. All my life I say I'm a Tibetan. I've, committed my life to this cause, Tibet, but I haven't seen Tibet. I haven't set foot on my own homeland, which I keep close to my heart, right? So one day with this, all these opportunities, passport, I can go to Tibet, see my own country, These are practical things, that matters in life. So that's why I think, Tibetans, I would like to live here, get my passport, travel documents, take care of these practical things in life, and to continue fight for Tibet.
The next goal for the Tibetan Photo Project is the Tibetan Photo Project Filmmakers Education Centers in India. And what we want to do with that is we want to set up hopefully 5 different centers where we have the computers with the programs on them that can be used to edit films, as well as the cameras, so that the Tibetans can go in, they can check out a camera, they can go out and shoot their own documentary type films, they can come in, they can learn the process of how to edit the films. We are in contact with a Tibetan over there that is very well schooled and educated in filmmaking, so we're hopeful that he will come on board as one of the instructors for this. And ultimately what we would do is we would turn these centers over to the Tibetans. And the reasoning behind this is we realize that though we're doing what we can right now, eventually we need to be able to pass this to someone else. And who we want to pass it back to is the Tibetans, and allow them to continue to keep sharing their voice and sharing their story through their own photos and documentaries that they're producing and putting out there, so that their voice will not be forgotten and that they will be heard. Left in the dust of the human race are tiny remnants of tattered cultures trying desperately to hold on to the keys that unlock the great mysteries of life. Did the American Indians understand things that we'll never know? And what of the Aborigines of Australia? Did one ever find proof of the existence of the human soul while on a walkabout? One of these keys also belongs to the Tibetans. The concept that solutions to the ills of the world lie within the content and quality of each individual's heart is lost on the me generation. Bigger weapons, faster computers and technology are the answers, and things have become the gods. More money, more power, more is the new sound of Om, the new Amen, the new Shalom. Free Tibet is a cause that has risen on the world stage to the level of the Nobel Peace Prize for the Dalai Lama in 1989. And for those who know their plight of human annihilation and cultural desecration by the Chinese, over the past 50 years, the soul of Tibet is embodied in the Dalai Lama. Every Tibetan seems to contain a portion of that soul. While life holds little mystery, those who've come in personal contact with the Dalai Lama can at least recognize that his gentle presence is powerfully felt like a mystery of life. What is it about the Save Tibet effort that seems to maintain a hold on the one element of human nature that we cannot define in DNA or through technology? Do we recognize that we cannot let another culture be swallowed up, or we lose all chance to find and prove that there is something greater within us than cells, than bone and flesh? Why will the concept of saving Tibet not stop nagging at the collective conscience? A Tibetan monk, when asked what he thought was in it for those in the West who were trying to help Tibet, said that there's nothing in it for us, except what is right. When asked about becoming a Buddhist, one Lama answered that religion should be a choice that follows one's own tradition. A person should pick a religion that matches their nature because religion is there to make people better. China is rising on the world stage as a military and economic force. China could save Tibet with a slight change in policy, and in doing so, it would rise above all great nations. But their current path is to gut the Tibetan culture, while leaving only a corpse dressed up to attract tourist dollars as sort of a Tibetan amusement park. Realistically, there will be no great change coming from China, and that leaves it to us to do whatever we can, large or small, to help the Tibetans save their culture. Individually, we gain nothing from the effort, but in saving Tibet, we prove the existence and power of the human spirit. Visually and respectfully yours, Sazzy Varga and Joe Mickey.
after you finish the whole thing?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's a good question. Yeah. So once we finish this mandala, we are going to do is we are going to dismantle the mandala.
You're gonna take it apart.
Yeah, taking apart. We doesn't use the word to destroy, no? If you use the word to destroy, it always have a negative consequences, negative feeling. That's why we are using the word called dismantle. We're taking apart,